the community of Mamelodi continues to grieve the devastating loss of two bright young women, Tshiamo and Baleseng Moramaga. Their brutal deaths have cast a long shadow over the nation, and as the community prepares for their final farewell, the wheels of justice turn slowly. In an interesting turn of events in the Mamelodi Magistrates Court, the man accused of this unimaginable crime, 38-year-old former tavern bouncer Tebogo Mnisi, made a brief appearance in a move that ensures he will remain in custody. Mnisi formally abandoned his application for bail. This legal decision means the accused will remain behind bars, effectively forfeiting his right to temporary release while the investigation and trial preparations continue. The case has been postponed, with Mnisi scheduled to reappear on January 9th next year. This development comes amidst reports that the accused has allegedly confessed to the murders. The two cousins will be laid to rest in their ancestral home of Lukau village outside Groblersdal as their families and friends seek a small measure of peace in this time of immense sorrow. Before we get into the discussion with our guests, the president of the Not In My Name organization, Siyabulela Jentile, and legal expert, Professor Anthony Diale, who joins me on this conversation right now. Prof, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. I'm going to start the conversation with you. Mnisi has abandoned his bail application. From legal strategy perspective, what does this move signal about the defense's confidence in their case, particularly in a matter as serious as double murder? Does abandoning bail simplify the prosecution's case? And what are the immediate consequences of the accused's rights and legal standing?
Good afternoon. Just a correction. So I'm Prof Windel Nortjie.
My apologies for that. Do go ahead.
So just know you wanted to speak to my colleague, but no, which is the traumatizing event for the whole of South Africa, not just the community of Mamelodi. And I think as a community, we are quite sick and tired of all the GBV that's taking place. But of course, the wheels of justice must turn. And the fact that he has abandoned bail does take place, and there's a reason for that. The fact that he's well known in the community means that if he, miraculously did get bail, he would return to that community and he would most likely be targeted by the community. So in the Criminal Procedure Act, there is a section or factor or ground that the court will take into account when to determine whether an accused person should get bail, whether it's an interest of justice to get bail, and that is if the accused has committed such a vile crime, such a horrific crime, like in this case, and there's an outrage in the community. It is not in the interest of justice for the court to release that person on bail. And I think his legal representative did speak to him about that, and they decided, look, yeah, it's just better not to go that route. And of course, he also mentioned admission. So he's clearly, at this stage, I guess he's sorry for what he did. We're not sure what has happened. He hasn't apologized yet, of course, but one can see that he is admitting to what he's done. But that doesn't mean that he's guilty of the crime. The court has that function to determine whether he is guilty of that crime. And a formal admission must be done in front of a peace officer at the police station, a very senior rank police officer. And that evidence will then also be presented to the court. And of course, he must still plead guilty or not guilty during the trial. So what will happen during the next few months is...
Yeah. It ultimately comes down to his pleadings in court, and that might mean that we would see a speedy trial. Usually a bail hearing comes before pleadings, or do they go hand in hand?
Yes, they do go before, but with such a serious case, sometimes a criminal matter, you'll see a criminal matter in court, especially in lower courts, in terms of 15 minutes, they are done. Bail, pleading, as well as sentencing. But these are minor offences, so you won't get to see this in this major trial. And what will happen is the bail proceeding has now been abandoned, so there won't be bail. So he will now appear for trial, and he'll be charged with the offence. He'll appear, and the first thing will happen at the trial phase is the fact that he must plead guilty or not guilty in terms of Section 112 or 115 of the Criminal Procedure Act. And that means that if he pleads not guilty, then that is what he decides then. But the state can use the fact that he then admitted in terms of Section 2220 in terms of the CPA So it is just the fact that what happens in court, that is what is important. Because they can always say the police forced me to plead guilty to or to admit to the crime. And that's what we often see.
Yeah. Should he plead guilty at the start of trial, it will almost immediately be adjourned and then go, or at least the trial will be closed and it will go into a sentencing thereafter. This is a double murder case, and there might be other charges ancillary to this that might be added to the charge sheet, which he would have to plead to. But what does the minimum sentencing look like in an instance of double murder, considering that the defense might want to make arguments of mitigation if he pleads guilty?
Yes, for sure. There will always be mitigating factors versus your aggravating factors. And in this case, the Section 51 of the Criminal Law Amendment Act will regulate this specific case because it's two double murders as well as attempted murder, as well as the possession of an unlicensed firearm and ammunition. So there's 5 charges, so it's very serious. But the court, or at least the state, will focus mostly on the murder and attempted murder. Those are carry a automatic life imprisonment sentence in terms of the act. So you can, as a defense counsel who will be representing Mr. Mnisi, come to court and say there are exceptional or substantial and compelling factors, circumstances why a court must deviate from that minimum sentence. So the defense can say we do not accept life imprisonment. We want to argue that 25 years or even 40 years direct imprisonment is sufficient in this case. That is all important when it comes to parole. So in terms of parole, in terms of life imprisonment, you can only apply after 25 years. In this case, it's very unlikely that he will succeed, but who knows what happens in prison in terms of rehabilitation. But if you get a 40-year imprisonment sentence, your parole will be low, will be in excess of 20 years. You have to serve 20 years or 25.
But I mean, if let's say he gets slapped with 2 life terms,
it's less.
So if he gets 2 life terms, is it likely to have?
Yes.
Is it likely to serve it concurrently along with all the other charges and the terms that comes from there? That means that the maximum would be 25 years if he serves it concurrently, or will the state say you serve them in succession?
Yes, usually these are run concurrently. And I mean, this also talks about, and I know the community doesn't always want to hear this, but we also need to think about our offenders in prison currently. And we need to think about the rehabilitation of these offenders. So once you go to a correctional facility, which he most likely will if he's found guilty, he will serve a very long time. And the idea is then to rehabilitate that individual. How crazy that seems at the moment. But we must also try and think to how we can change our community's views on these vile individuals as we see them. But there should be an opportunity for us to rehabilitate them. But in any event, he might be able to apply for parole for 25 years, but very unlikely because the community will also have a role to play, as well as the family of the victims will have a role to play in that specific decision at the parole board. So very unlikely that he will be released in 35 years.
Yeah. Siyabulela,
if he's found guilty, which is what I say, this person is, so until proven guilty. Very important just to remember that also for the listeners and the viewers.
Yeah. Siyabulela, I want to bring you into the conversation here. Let's talk about that, the point at the tail end there that Professor Nortjie had made there, which is rehabilitation. We're seemingly not particularly good at it in the South African correctional services at rehabilitating, particularly not rapists, murderers, and women abusers. And the community, as Prof Nortjie says, communities often don't understand that element of part of the justice equation and calculus that goes into sentencing. Where is it that we can begin to get rehabilitation right, particularly when it comes to speaking to perpetrators of rape and the murder of women?
Good afternoon, Oliver, to you and the viewers at home, and to my colleague there. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear his sentiments properly because of sound. However, I do want to, first and foremost, extend my deepest condolences to the Moramaga family and the community of Mamelodi East. You are raising a very important point around rehabilitation, and this is what we've been trying to raise and do as the Not In My Name movement for the past close to a decade now, 8 or 9 years or so. And sorry?
I can hear you loud and clear. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Sure. So the point I was making was that rehabilitation is very important, and it's something that we've been trying to work around. We've through partnerships with correctional centers, services centers in South Africa. And what we have found, Oliver, is that our correctional services, is not rehabilitative in nature. And so the responsibility to rehabilitate men and boys cannot be left to them alone. And that is where we now need to take collective responsibility as communities, as the civil society sector, to say that here's a group of men who have been found to be wrong or on the wrong side of the law, and how do we assist them, and how can we reintegrate it back into the community. But I do want to say that there are extraordinary cases. There are cases which, and I'm making this comment as an activist, not necessarily a professional, to say that some cases they come across as that the perpetrators are beyond rehabilitation. I mean, the incident of the Mamelodi guy, the one we're talking about now, who has committed a double murder. It's someone that one would deem beyond rehabilitation, and unfortunately for people like that, the law enforcement or rather the criminal justice system needs to take its full course. And these are the people who should be removed from the streets. These are the people who should be removed from our communities, because I really do not think that there is something or there is anything that they can do to be successfully reintegrated into the community. They are dangerous people who should be removed in the community. But also as a last point, to say that this is not a Mamelodi issue. It's a national crisis, and I know that the investigations are still ongoing, but we cannot rule out the element of gender-based violence and femicide on this particular matter, which continues to claim the lives of our young girls and women daily in South Africa. And it is unfortunate that we are here talking about Tshiamo and Baleseng, who, as I have come to learn and understand, that they were full of life and they had their entire futures ahead of them. And unfortunately, someone decided to play God and decided to revoke the right to life, which is enshrined in our constitution. So it's a good point that you're raising, and I hope those who are responsible for the correctional services can review the call for a review of their services and ensure that rehabilitation takes center stage and is actually effective.
Yeah, let's talk more broadly speaking about sentencing and harsh sentencing. We would all like to see rapists and murderers face harsh sentencing and go away for a long time. And we hope that the effect of that, Sia, is that it sends a message to other potential perpetrators that the might of the law will catch up to you and that you will go away and spend a long time in jail. But it seems like even when there's cases of harsh sentencing, which we've seen in the past, it doesn't send that chilling effect into the hearts and minds of rapists and murderers. In fact, they still believe that they could brazenly get away with it. How is it that we can make society, at least make men think twice when it comes to raping and murdering women using instruments of the criminal justice system?
That's one of the challenges that we've encountered in the space, Oliver, in a sense that we're still trying to find deterrence, and this is actually where you have other groupings in our society come out to say that perhaps it is time that South Africa starts having a discussion around the death penalty. And we've always argued against that on the basis that there's no proof, or rather anywhere else in the world, even where in nations that do this, it has not proven to be a deterrent. So we need to find ways of ensuring that those who are processed through the criminal justice system, it actually sends a strong message to those who are potential perpetrators and those who wish to do it. And one of the ways which I believe is that these people, one, their freedom needs to be taken away completely. And I feel like a lot of our inmates have got rights. They've got too many rights, and they, as someone said, they lived soft life. One of the former ministers mentioned a few days ago at the Madlanga Commission the amount of money that the state spends on an inmate, and so people who have raped and killed in our society cannot enjoy privileges while they have committed such atrocities, when they've taken life of others, when even rape itself actually is an equivalent of death, because when you rape someone, you've actually, you've destroyed that person, you have killed them, because you've taken away their agency and their right to say no and yes. So one of the ways or the things that we can strengthen is the sentencing, to say people like this man, this
Let me pause it. I want to, Prof Nortjie, I want to hear your thoughts on that. Can we use sentencing as a deterrent tool, an instrument in the toolkit of criminal justice system?
Now, there's a big debate about this in the country and worldwide, and my colleague is absolutely right. And Justice Cameron, I love his teachings. And
oh, seems like we've lost Prof Nortjie there. Prof Nortjie? Seems like we've entirely lost Professor Nortjie there. Well, Prof Nortjie, do you mind just saying that again? We had lost your connectivity there just for a while.
He's thinking about whether he's going to get away with that crime. So that's where I think we have to put the responsibility on this African Police Service. And we know what the shambles they are in currently. But how do we improve our community safety? And how do we change the culture of GBV in our country? Because it's been a culture since the days of apartheid. Since we've seen the police vans drive into our communities, our communities being horrified by the police, and we've created these men who think they have power over women and children, which has to change. So this is a very important debate which we need to take further. This is one of the things we need to talk about, the national dialogue. We need to really focus on this. And I'm very excited about this because we need to put what we're dealing with today, we need to talk about it more.
Yeah.
But it's not just it's no silver bullet to it. It has to. We need to think diligently about this. How are we going to approach combating GBV better in our country? Because it's not working currently. We've had many laws passed over the last 3 years, 3 different laws, to be harder on them in terms of bail and so on. But yeah, it's not happening. It's not working. So deterrent effect is not having the effect on the community, on our people in the community who commit these crimes. That is the problem.
Prof Nortjie, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Siyabulela Jentile, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. We're going to take a break. We continue with the Week in Review on the other side of this.